definitely a happy ass. Miss Fairchild, I'm going to need you to stay late again and take dictation.
Why, Mr. Jeremy, it would be my pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Jeremy speaking. Before we depart, please make sure all tray tables are in their upright positions and all packages are stowed in their proper compartments. Prepare for takeoff. Okay. Are we off? Oh, that's it. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's nice. Oh, honey, watch your teeth. Watch your teeth. Oh, this is great. Oh, God, the mic is still on. Oh, I'm sorry. Folks, I'm sorry. This has been embarrassing. Well, now you know why they call it a cockpit. It's the plumber.
Plumber? I didn't call a plumber.
Hello, this is Ron Jeremy. And like I have always said, a relaxed ass is a happy ass. But if it's tight and unrelaxed, it's an unhappy ass. That was definitely a happy ass. Yeah. That was definitely a happy ass. It's the plumber. It's the plumber. It's Ron Jeremy, the plumber. It's me, Ron Jeremy, plumber.
Say something. Dünkü 3. 1 2 3 1 2 3. It's there now. 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Huh? It's on. Okay. Okay.
You want some more wine?
Let's see some more wine. This one somehow I like the bottle. Yeah. Mom. Yeah. Oh, you want some more?
Oh yeah, you're on.
I'm on. Yes.
Živijo. Živijo. Ful manj kratek kabel, veš. Tako, do sam greva lahko. Živijo.
Živijo!
To je Hana, jaz sem pa Dušan. Se ne vsi poznate. Anyway, dobrodošli na prvem javnem večeru akademskih oreščkov. Programa, ki smo ga s Hano zasnovala v koprodukciji Fotopuba in ULAY Foundacije, to mogoče počel. Programa, ki smo ga začela v bistvu marca, tik pred Covidom, z 12 študentkami različnih akademij po Ljubljani, z nekimi dvemi premisami. Prva je nekako povezovanje študentov vseh akademij, fakultet v Ljubljani, ker smo res videli en manko tega. Druga je pa vabljenje in gostovanje različnih tujih predavateljev, umetnikov, mislecev, kuratorjev, najrazličnejših ljudi v Ljubljani, podajanje znanja, raziskovanje umetniške produkcije, raziskovanje mišljenja, raziskovanje najrazličnejših stvari in nekako delanja skupaj. Najn cilj je nekako ustvarjanje neke nove generacije intelektualcev ali pa umetnikov, ki sodelujejo, pa raziskujejo nove stvari, pa nekako ustvarjajo nek čist nov način delovanja v kulturni sferi ali pa še toliko širše. Danes gostimo Ahmeta Ögüta, ki ga bo Hana malo bolj podrobno predstavila. Se upravičujemo za zamudo, sem je sončni zahod glih tam, pa smo mogli malo počakati, da pade sonce. To je prvo izmed večjih predavanj, ki jih bomo gostili v letošnjem letu, še ne veva koliko. Plan je bil 6, zdaj bodo verjetno 3. Ampak ste vabljeni na naslednjo. Zdaj pa predajam besedo Hani.
Hvala. Živijo, najprej en velik hvala vsem, da ste se udeležili našega dogodka, kljub temu, da je čas pred poletjem, kljub covidu in tako naprej. Jaz bi najprej predstavila vseh 12 oziroma danes 10 naših deklet, ki so študentke našega programa in brez katerih nič od tega ne bi bilo možno. Punce, ki, tako kot midva, vlagajo ogromen svojega časa, ogromen energije, ogromen svoje intime v ta program in ga sooblikujejo in se mi zdi, da smo v zadnjih mesecih vsi na nek tak poseben način skupaj zrastali in rastemo še naprej do končne razstave, ki bo januarja oziroma februarja oziroma decembra, ne vemo še točno kdaj, razstava, predstavitev praks teh deklet, ki prihajajo z različnih področji. Danes je z nami Ahmet Ögüt. Sorry Ahmet, we are doing this presentation in Slovenia because, you know, it's somehow as it should be regarding the cultural standards of our municipality, who doesn't support us, but still. Ahmet Ögüt je bil rojen leta 1981, je turški umetnik kurdskih korenin, iniciator platforme solidarnostne za izmenjavo znanja za begunce in migrante Silent University, konceptualni umetnik, ki je oster kritik umetniškega sistema, nekdo, ki deluje znotraj političnega polja, pa je hkrati prav do tako imenovanega artivizma izjemno kritičen, nekdo, katerega praksa naju z Dušanom nagovarja že več let in izredno vesela sva, da se je odzval pozabilu, da danes naredi javno predavanje in potem v četrtek izvede enodnevno delavnico za naše izbrane študentke in je v bistvu njihov mentor do končne razstave. En input iz tujine, nekoga tega kova, kakor je Ahmet, ki svetuje osrednjim univerzitetnim programom po svetu, se nama zdi v Ljubljani bistven. In Ahmet, thank you so much for taking the time and being our first guest. We really do appreciate your input, time, energy. We're so happy that you're here. Really, thank you. Woo!
Yes, can you hear me? Even the ones in the back? Yes? Perfect. Anna.
Maybe you move your phone.
So this is also my first trip since, work trip since March. And as Ljubljana was the first place I had my first solo show ever, I'm happy after COVID craziness, this is my first work trip that was possible. Actually, everything else was happening, online. I had other commitments, and even if they offered me to do this online, I would come and do it here. So I'm happy to be here, and thanks everybody for coming. I have a lot of works related to highway and road, so let's say this is on purpose, what you will see, But to start with, I did some lectures that are not in usual formats, and this is not like something that I have done before, that using inflatable balloons. So I played with the format, and usually, lectures are boring things. You don't want to stay there so long. It's impossible to focus when somebody always talks with the same voice, never up and down. It's just boring after some time. And usually what they show also not that interesting. So hopefully what I show will take your interest, and I want to start with one experimental lecture I did in Istanbul. That was the year 2013. 2013 was a kind of extreme year for us. So since then I don't know any normal year, but that was the start kind of in Istanbul, especially when there was the uprising happening, and it was the same year Istanbul Biennial was supposed to happen as an international event, but they had to face a situation just 2-3 months before the opening that public space was kind of out of control. There was Gezi Park protests, and because of that as well, any artwork that was planned to be in public space wasn't possible anymore. All these international artists, they had plans, they were coming to the city, and the biennial was going to happen in September, and curator announced that in solidarity with the park and the movement, they will cancel all the projects in public space. And I didn't like this decision. It was kind of an easy decision because artwork likes to cancel things. Whenever there is a pandemic, uprising, or military coup, they cancel things. They don't think of other options. And we kind of need to change that. But anyway, this was another situation that they said in order not to compete with what is happening in public space, there was the uprising, we cancel all the projects in public space. But actually the truth was that they weren't able to get any permission from the government anymore, even to do any kind of art in public space. So in September, I wasn't doing this project or this talk for the biennial, but I was asked to do a performance. So I had told this friend, okay, let's organize something that is happening in public space, and if and I invited people to this address, this building, and there was this terrace, and around 200 people showed up there. There was a lot of international people still in town. Everybody came, and they were looking for me to give a lecture. But they didn't see me, I wasn't there. They were searching for me. Instead, there was a guy with a binocular standing on the terrace looking at the tower opposite. So you see, this is the Galata Tower, and this used to be the highest point in the city. And I never went up. It's a very touristic thing to do. That was the only time I went up to Galata Tower. I got a ticket, I went up, and I was doing a lecture with the help of another person, that was Özgür, that's him. And Özgür was the only lip reader in Istanbul, in Turkey. He just invented the job, and everyone went to him. All kinds of conflicts, they would go to Özgür to lip read the politicians, football players, any kind of conflict, they would go to Özgür. I also went to Özgür, I said, do you want to collaborate with me? I want to do this lecture, but on the Galata Tower, and everybody is 500 meters away, opposite in this terrace, looking for me, and I will just do the lecture without any microphone or megaphone, nothing. And he would have the binocular, and he would just try to lip read what I'm saying and translate to the people in the imagine how much lost in translation situation was happening at that moment when I was at the tower. And at some point a lot of tourists came, and they were just looking at me, and I was speaking, mostly like speaking to myself, but with a lot of movements like this. So he said I have to cut my mustache very short, and I have to do really big movements with my mouth to that he can understand from distance what I'm saying. So this was also risky because I didn't know if I can make it upstairs or if they would stop me doing this. But it was really, you know, quite event. Özgür also helps the snipers. He helps the police and snipers too to lip read criminals or protesters as well. So this guy helps, also works with disabled people. So it was really interesting to work with this guy and do this lecture. And I've done other lectures. I've done a lecture, running lecture in Sydney, in a city where everybody is really good runner except me. And we did a running lecture. So I was talking, trying to give a lecture while running with the runners. So there was around 10 people running with me at a time. So I try to play with the format because I do a lot of artist talks, and I think I don't see it as kind of a side tool. It became kind of a main thing. So everything, actually, every situation I'm in, you know, it's kind of performative right now also to be here. It might look like a disadvantage, but it's actually an advantage for me. So you can put me in any disadvantage situation, I will make something of it and pretend that was actually planned and it was advantage, not a disadvantage. So from there I go to this early, let's see. Yeah. This is the work I showed in 2005 in Ljubljana at Mala Galleria. So when I was a baby, I came here doing my first show and was showing this piece. This is the time when I was in Istanbul and I have very little time to make art. And I went to public space and transformed 2 cars of somebody, like parking around, into police cars and taxi, Istanbul taxi, using cardboard. So it was really a prankster street art kind of thing, and you didn't really need any budget or invitation. So I did it by myself and without any invitation, without any budget. And later this became a key work at the time that I showed at Istanbul Biennial, the first biennial I was taking part. And I tried to keep that spirit because this was like something I could do even COVID time somehow. You know, it's possible. You don't need to, you know, need an invitation. You don't need a big budget. Over the years, there was a lot of occasions that there was actually big budget and, you know, to do things that in larger scale. And sometimes not even any, I didn't have any time to think of project that cost nothing. So I kept that alive as much as I can in a busy schedule, which is occupied with all these commissioned works that are larger scale and so on. So I always went back and forth. If I gave up that nobody would be asking for it. So I still start the presentation with this kind of work, just something that I try to keep the spirit as simple as it is. This is a project I did in Helsinki. So we don't really need a sound. In Helsinki, there was an attempt to have Guggenheim. They were looking for, you know, they had, Guggenheim is a franchise museum, and they go to some spots in the world, and the first one they went to Bilbao, and then in Europe, the second place they wanted to go Helsinki. And usually, actually, the one in New York doesn't have its own budget. So it's really living from the budget money that is generated from Bilbao and Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and also they wanted to have Helsinki, Guggenheim, instead of the local museum there, which is Kiasma Museum. And so local scene in Finland, which is normally not that, like, they don't have those solidarity moments so often, somehow really unhappy about it because they were asking for 4 million euros just to give the name of the museum, replace the name of the local museum into Guggenheim, and they had to run their museum still with their own money and so on. So the brand would arrive to the city and generate tourism and so on. That's the promise. They had to spend 4 million, the city has to give to Guggenheim to have the name of this international museum. So local artists, curators, writers, they didn't want that. They said we can do with a lot less budget, a lot better public projects in public space. And they actually managed to stop the commission, and they also got quite okay money from the city to run and do their projects. And it was like all generation of artists and curators. They are self-organized and they were doing it, and at the end they turned into a small foundation. And then the first artist they invited, it was me, to do a project. So I said, well, I have this idea to work with the local firemen, and we use their fire truck. And I have to go talk to the fire department and tell them my idea. And they didn't speak English also. So I had to go and do a lecture at the fire department, and half of the lecture they had to go take care of some burning house and come back. So these guys actually work with me for a couple of weeks to prepare for it, and also for 1 week going around. And during that time they were not on a break, so they had to go always, like in 1 second they would be dressed up, ready to go take care of burning cars and houses and come back, and we continue our workshop, how to print books. So I got inspired from the story of a dystopian story of Fahrenheit 451, where firemen in the future, they burn books. So reading books is an illegal thing in the future society, and they burn books. So I thought, okay, let's put the printers in the fire truck and go to around the city and print books, print banned books, but for absurd reasons, not like only fascist books that you know why is the reason they are banned, but absurd reasons. Like, for instance, Alice in Wonderland is banned in China because animals speak like human. So Chinese government thought this was dangerous, so they banned Alice in Wonderland. So, or a book, children book in Texas was banned because the author's name was same as a Marxist writer's name, so they accidentally banned a children book. So in Texas. So I made a selection of all those books, and we distributed them, working with an underground publisher. We got all the proper permissions, and we printed them and distributed them. So the firemen became the producers of the books, and they learned how to print books in a couple of days. And I was also with them, but I was very bad at using the folding machine, glue machine, and really they were making proper books in like 5-10 minutes. And there was a long list. So they went around in a city like Helsinki. It's a shy city. People don't really go talk to each other. It's like always Corona times. They keep 1.5 meter distance always. There are pictures you can check online in a bus station, for instance. So firemen, they were as a group, somehow they agree with this idea and they work with me. So it's kind of a super special situation that they take it serious and they prioritize it, and they take the ownership. After 5 days, they didn't say anymore it's Ahmet's project. They said it's our project, and we print his books, and they are about this and that. So in the beginning, they never read any of the books. And towards the end, they read the books, and they were actually talking about the books to the public. And for some reason, they also, members of the public, everyone who passed by this truck, they came and they were really interactive. And it was a big surprise in Helsinki that such thing happened. They even deliver books through windows as well. So there is a little moment they are delivering one book through the window. Happy public. So this is actually good for Corona times if you can't go to the go to public space. So I did collaborate over the years with a lot of people. They have nothing to do with the art world, and they come from different professions. And one day in 2015, I invited them all to meet each other. But probably I won't have time to talk about it. This is another work. Since we are next to the highway, I was invited to do a project right by the road in Japan, in the mountains. They have a triennial where they commission artworks every 3 years, and they keep some of them, unfortunately not mine. But we were able to keep that car up like this for 4 months in the mountains. And only people, there was some tours, but that doesn't really count. main people who were the witness of this work were the drivers. And it's very quick moment, you know, you just pass by and then you just see this car standing like that. So I thought that was it. So I just put this car like that, magically standing like that, because there's actually some local Japanese car guy, not the art installers, know how to do it. So even I went very close by to see how the guy managed to do. He didn't put anything through the car. He just the corner of the wheel touching the ground, and the car is standing like that. I went in and it was still standing. So my idea was, you know, too sophisticated conceptually. I think of car culture in Middle East where they take Japanese cars like Toyota, you know, this kind of vehicles, big vehicles, and they do drifting. They go, you know, they go on two wheels and they stand on the car. So we all know this tradition. It started when they start promoting Toyota cars in Middle East, in Kuwait and in Abu Dhabi and in all these cities. And so this tradition never happened in Japan. So I thought, okay, let's bring it at least visually to the roads in Japan. These cars are produced there in the middle of nowhere in this, you know, area. So I just put the car back there. So I had this idea and nobody got it, of course. So they saw something else. This is what they did with it. They stopped their car. They start taking pictures with this car as they have super special powers. You know, nobody was interested with this Middle East reference I am trying to make, this subculture going back to Japan. No one has any interest in that. But what they do, they have these funny photos on internet I found, many of them. They just went to the car and they just like, you know, imagined the scenes. But actually, the source of this comes with natural disasters. So they don't think the subculture in somewhere else, but they think if a car is standing like that, it's like a building standing during an earthquake and it's never falling, you know. That's why also this guy was able to make this car stand like this. Probably in another country I wouldn't find any car technician to do that like that. He was able to do it because they grow up with that culture, prepared for tsunami, earthquake and all this stuff. So it was more about the natural disaster than what I was trying to do. And that was really interesting, that bringing something and discovering something else. And that's me in the car, so you can see in the corner. This is my show that was supposed to open in March, and you know what happened. So it was installed and not seen for almost 3 months. Nobody entered the space. So just in Azerbaijan, in Baku. So it took me 1 year. I went there for site visit. I made research, and I had an idea. So there was this film. It's actually an outdoor modular LED screen which has small parts. The original idea was to use the screen as a wall and take the parts slowly during the show and replace it with the things we found in the flea market. They are mostly Soviet objects, or objects from Soviet times. It's an interesting cosmopolitan place which is not a Western kind of cosmopolitan place. It has a lot of heavy history of Soviet times, but also Iranian and Turkish influences. And the main languages they speak is Russian and Turkish. Azeri, but also Turkish, the other, not English, you know. So when I went there, there was 5 things. This is from a Soviet monument. Was immediately there visible, seeing a Soviet monument next to Turkish influenced mosque right next to it, and then these crazy futuristic towers, which is now the new identity of all those countries around there, you know, because there's a lot of oil money. So the craziest architecture, also Zaha Hadid's, for instance, most crazy building is also there in Baku. So they have this architecture, but still all around you find Soviet monuments and also very heavy influence of Turkish architecture and also mosques and so on. So there was not much to do instead of documenting, so I found former Soviet flight attendants who are still active Azeri flight attendants, but they were Soviet flight attendants. And I went to this neighborhood that's completely destroyed, almost completely destroyed. It's a former Soviet neighborhood, and that has, what I found in that neighborhood was very interesting was literature and poetry. So I dive into something super heavy political situation. You know, it is this neighborhood no one really wants to talk about. Only I can do it because I'm an international artist coming to the town, going to this neighborhood. So it was an advantage, turning also, you know, could have been a disadvantage for a local artist. So I just addressed it in a way that I encountered it. So there was the Tolstoy Street and other things I saw, the graffitis I saw and so on, and I did this piece, but never seen. They were able to open the show for 2 weeks, and now it's also installed but not seen. They had to close it. This is another work I did. These are the most recent ones for that show. It's still there. Animals occupying art institutions. So somehow I come across the story of falcons on the Tate. You know, Tate was a former factory, and on the tower there are 2 falcons living. And some of them, there are some articles about them, so not so many people knows, but those falcons occupy the tower and they are part of the institution, basically, you know. So I was wondering if there are other animals occupying institutions, and I discovered these other animals. You know, they hired this dog in Boston at Fine Arts Museum to get rid of some bugs. Yarat Foundation, where I was doing the show, had cats. Like, I saw some plates in front of the institution. I asked what's happening. They said there was this cat always coming back, so they adopted the cat. And or the polar bears. There's an art residency in north of Norway where they send artists in an area where there's more polar bears than people, and you need to have guards with shotguns to protect you as an artist to be in a residency there. And also bats in Cambodian National Museum. Thousands of bats are hiding in the rooftop. It was discovered, and these stories. So this is the falcon of yeah. So it's gonna be an ongoing, some sort of 3-dimensional archive. One of the public projects which had unexpected story was in Belgium. So I was in this cute medieval town, Ghent in Belgium. I was asked to do a project, and I discovered a building standing there which was not one of the locations they showed me, but I saw a word writing on it, and it was saying "Vooruit." And I said, okay, I asked what "Vooruit" means, and they said it means forwards. And it was the first socialist cooperative in the history that was almost 100 years run by the people of the town, and all the money generated was shared by the people of the town. So there was a first socialist cooperative model all around the world, and nobody knows about it. Now also new generation doesn't know about it. The building is there, and usually what happens to those places, they had some political function, they turn into culture centers or art spaces. So nobody knows the history, what was happening there before. So I got the same image. I used the same image of René Magritte's, mysterious castle, a floating castle, and I replaced it with the building of Vooruit. And I thought, okay, it's still, a work that you just take a picture, you pass by, you see, you don't know what it is, and people take a picture, and it's kind of distributed as a kind of visual rumor. But 5 days later, they shut it down. So if you put a commercial on a helium balloon, nobody shuts it down. But if you put this building, nobody knows what was the previous function. Somebody knows somehow and then shuts it down. And it was in the front cover of the local newspaper. So I talked to the museum. They say we will send it. It's probably some random guy with a rifle. And then later we find out that's the city that has most people have own guns, private, rifles and guns in their homes. I didn't know back then. So somebody shuts it down, we fix it, it takes 2 weeks, we put it up again, it's super expensive project. And 5 days later, somebody cuts the rope and it flies dangerously and lands on a street in the city center. Police comes again, take another report. And we send it again, it's fixed again. Museum doesn't want to do anything about it. They think it's still a random thing. Third time, we put it up again, and then again somebody shuts it down. So they find 5 bullets in the balloon. And so it's a balloon, you can fix it, but it's expensive. It took me 2 years, I fixed it, I put it in another space, and in Berlin also, last year we were able to put for 1 day up during May Day, and more like an intervention, and police came, but we were able to do it as a culture event. But we never discovered why in this city in Belgium such thing happens. When I put this in Istanbul, everybody will say, yeah, of course it happens, it's in Istanbul. But when you put it in Ghent, nobody expects such thing happen. So I think that was more interesting, that museum had to rethink their relationship with their own public instead of just putting it back and then it's down again and putting it back, it's down again. This is a work I did in 2015 first time, and it has been the different versions around I've been doing. It's a proposal inspired from Mikhail Bakunin from 1849. So in Dresden with his friends they were making barricades, and there was a lot of artists, architects, writers, musicians involved in that movement in Dresden. And Bakunin was there writing for a daily newspaper, and he proposed his friends stories like that. He proposed his friends, when they were making the barricades, he said, why don't we borrow artworks from the National Museum, put in front of the barricade, so when Prussian army comes, they will not destroy the barricade, they will see all these very, very expensive paintings from the museum collection. And his activist friends find this idea very silly and they don't do it. So this never happens until I proposed the same idea to Van Abbe Museum in Eindhoven in Holland in 2015. I said, well, there was this proposal of Bakunin, why don't we do it now? And we make a barricade, we use your collection from the museum. So you can see there is a Picasso, there is a Leger. I don't know the insurance value. I don't want to know their insurance value. So there is Marlène Dumas and Lissitzky and so on, like really valuable paintings. We were able to do this barricade at the museum. But the idea was not to create a symbolical barricade, but it was actually, if there is an uprising in the future in Holland, we make a contract, and if the museum buys this piece, they have to give it back to the streets. If there is an uprising that is defined through the lawyer, we created a contract and we defined what is uprising. You know, there are all kinds of uprising. But an uprising that is really linked to human rights, and there are reasons why it's happening, that international acknowledgement of that uprising, they can actually go to the museum and ask for this barricade. If it's in the collection of the museum, they are obliged to give the barricade, which is my work, and they have to negotiate with the people to give the paintings as well. They have to negotiate. They don't have to give them because it's different artists who did the paintings, but they have to have that negotiation with so the contract obliges and forces the museum to do this negotiation. So half of the work is the contract on the wall to be signed, and when the work is sold finally to a museum, and the other half is the barricade and the paintings. So this is the version, the first version, and the second, another version in Copenhagen with the Art Academy's collection, another version with the private collection in Istanbul, and this one at the Ludwig Museum, 40 years anniversary of the Ludwig Museum in Cologne. We used their collection, and this is finally, I was asked to do it in Dresden, so I did the version in Dresden as well, and so on. So now I'm doing another version in Amsterdam in September with the collection of Stedelijk Museum, and this time we are very close. Maybe the museum might buy it. So the most progressive museums, even Van Abbe is very progressive in that sense, they didn't buy it because this speculating feature is not an easy job, even for a progressive museum. they all love to show this piece, so I'm doing it for the 6th time, and it's not sold yet. I know it will take maybe 10 years. It might also go to Dresden, a museum there. But eventually that will happen, and the moment it happens, it's not a proposal anymore, it's not my responsibility anymore, it's the museum's responsibility. When a moment like that happens, when there's an uprising happening in a serious level in that country, they actually have to give that work back. So I wasn't interested in making an illustration of Bakunin's idea in a white cube room, but actually keep the work alive until the moment this decision-making time comes. How is it going? I'm just like going from one work to another one. Yeah? This is a little work, but I think it's quite important to talk about this. I was asked sometimes to do projects for art fairs. You know, usually art fairs would like to have some side projects by artists who are making the content of the art fair. You know, not only about selling the artworks, but you know, having some discursive artworks next to the projects that commissioned by the fair. So this was a small fair in Geneva, and I was asked to do a project, and I said, okay, I have an idea. I was in LA visiting friends, and I saw these people. It's a very common thing to do. On the roadside, they have signs, and they are called sign spinners, and they are paid very low, mostly Hispanic workers. You know, and for hours they're just spinning signs, like commercial advertisement signs. And some of them are really, there are YouTube videos, they're super like choreographic, you know, it's super skillful. I found some bored ones, so they are like really not into it, but they have to do it. And I have no idea what it does as an advertisement. They try to get the attention of the drivers, I guess. Well, they catch my attention. I filmed 3 or 4 of them, and then I proposed the art fair director in Geneva. I said, okay, I want to hire 2 performers. They will be paid as much as you are paid as the director. So their hourly payment will be as much as yours. And I will invent a job for them, which is spinning screens, you know, as the spinners, showing this video. So it is an invented job. So it's called fair wage for a made-up job. So it's a job that is not needed, you know. But because they do this job, performance, they are paid as much as the fair director, they were paid, and as much as me as well. So we are all synchronized. Fair director, me, and the performance, we are all paid the same per hour. And then they have access to all the VIP, equally access to the VIP situations. So VIP lounge, driver, and all these things. So the performance who did it, they had the full access, same equal access. Later I did in Berlin, so their hourly payment was synchronized with a member of parliament. So this was the Berlin version later. So I have few works that were attacked. I thought this was over, but unfortunately in September happened again. I did this piece, which is, I tried to find the most friendly way possible to make it. You know, it's this 3-dimensional street art style illusion painting, which I made myself and put it out in the street. So if you pay little attention, who are they, who are these people, then it might get a little bit complicated. I was asked to do it in Timișoara, in a small town in Romania, but Timișoara is a key town. When uprising against Ceausescu happened, that started in Timișoara. It's a wealthy town, but it's where the uprising happened against corrupted communist regime at the time. So they are hypersensitive about, when they hear communism, they are very hypersensitive. And the other thing they don't like is Ottomans. They really don't like Ottomans. And Ottomans were there 165 years. And if you walk around Timișoara, there is no trace to find about Ottoman Empire. It's all under the pavement. So if you remove the pavement, you will see the wooden Ottoman town is still there with the floor plan of the hammams and mosques and everything. But if you go to Belgrade, not so far from there, you see the mosques are still there somehow. But in Timișoara, there is no trace. So Austro-Hungarian Empire came and they changed the castle, how it looks and everything. So I was interested what is under the carpet. So I little bit dig in. I had a tour with a couple of historians, enthusiastic historians about the Ottoman period. Said, okay, let's find a way. If there was any moment in the history, Ottomans and communists, they were one. It was one thing. It's not something I would like to invent, but was there a moment in the history that there was a Ottoman socialist moment? And there was. In 1910, there was an Albanian guy in Istanbul. He founded Ottoman Socialist Party. And he was able to print a magazine in Ottoman language introducing Bakunin, Karl Marx, all of them, and having letters from the workers all around Turkey, or Ottoman Empire at the time. So for a few years he was able to continue this publication until they sent him to Siberia or wherever he had to go. So and this Albanian guy studied in Romania at the time, you know. So I thought it's a perfect guy. He exists. I don't have to invent him. So I just put him in this little hall under the ground. Where is this Ottoman living room in Timisoara in public space. So this is the second version. Is how it works. The second version was in Malaysia as a carpet, but the first one was in the street in Romania like this. And we just put it in public space. And left the work. Not so long after, things started happening. So he is standing, Hilmi Bey, who is the founder of Ottoman Socialist Party, is standing there. Next to him is the Ottoman Feminist Organization initiator. And she has the Ottoman Feminist Organization stamp, which looks like some Arabic stamp for a lot of right-wing Romanians in the street. So what has created, first this guy came, he just pulled it off before the work dries, the first day. I wasn't even arrived yet. So I arrived, I was like, where's the work? They said, there was this guy, he was very angry, he removed it. So we put it again, he comes again, I talk to him. He's like, I hate Muslims, I hate Arabs. And I said, is this guy's Muslim and Arabs, do you think? This is Albania, they're like non-Muslim Ottomans. And you just see this like that. So after a little bit of conversation, he said, okay, I have no problem with this work. And he left. He left, but there was other guys. So 2 days after, another guy came and he was attacking all the LGBT spaces, or there was a show about Palestine in the town, whatever that is happening there. He would go there and he would do these crosses. So he came, of course, to this work as well. He did crosses. I had no intention this work to be attacked. I thought I'd find the most friendly way possible, but I didn't think they will do that so fast. So the anger was so big from this certain group. Later they came and cut it into small pieces. This is the third time we printed. And of course I talked to the biennial and I was like, let's do something about it. We can't just put it back. They're gonna come back and do whatever they want. So eventually for the closing of the biennial, they did another knee print and they put a guard there. But there was a shift between guards, like few seconds. One guard is leaving the other one. Somebody comes with gasoline and this is the result. About to burn, and then they put this sand kind of thing over it. So this is how the work looked like at the end. But they really think they will destroy it. It was a digital painting. You can just print it again. So I just went back to Malaysia and made a new version of it. They can never destroy it. You have no idea what happened in the forums in Romanian. Luckily, I don't understand the language about this work and so on. Okay, still ongoing. What's the time? When did we start? It's almost 1 hour now. So soon we can go to the questions. Maybe quickly I show this one because it's kind of done in my hometown. I was invited to be part of a prize in Kiev in 2012. It was organized by one of the, very wealthy art collector, and he was offering to young generation artists $100,000, and all these international artists going and so on. So I found the format of this prize was, for me, very problematic. So I didn't feel at all to take the money, even for production, you know. First, I refused to send them my work in the first edition. Then I saw all entire artwork, all my cool friends with good artworks and good artists, they took part. And the rest taking part in to be the jury. So I thought, okay, why I should exclude myself? I joined the next edition, but if they ask me, so they asked me to submit, and then I was in the shortlist. And if I am in the shortlist, I will do a work about the money itself. So make sure none of that money comes to me, even if I get the prize. Not that I didn't need the money, but I just didn't want the money from this situation. So I thought, okay, what I do with the production money, I turn it into $1 bills in my hometown, because there's a tradition of money showering, and they do it with dollar bills. So if I go to my hometown and make $1 bills, so it was like a lot every time I had a bag of money, going crashing some random people's weddings that I don't know. So I would go pretend I am either from the groom side or from the bride side, because usually they are just meeting. So both sides don't know each other. So they think I am from one of the sides, and I just dance halai with them and do money showering and leave. So I went to all kinds of weddings, village weddings, middle class weddings, upper class weddings, weddings that last 4 or 5 days, night weddings, day weddings, and every single dollar bill, and they also put some fake dollars because it's also cheaper, but mine was real. I hope they noticed the difference. So I put a website on each dollar bill. So I thought, okay, I found a way to do something in my hometown and give this money, the production money, which was $2,000, not so little. So I just gifted to the weddings there, and with a message. So every bill had this website, and if they go to the website by any chance, because the dollar bills can travel to the other cities or other countries as well, maybe there's a I don't know what happened, but maybe I can show. Okay, so if anyone uses it for that purpose, they go to the website. It's a website for free software developed by a group of hackers in LA. And they were developing for paralyzed people. With their eyes, they can make drawings. So they made it specifically for a graffiti artist who could make a very famous one, but who got paralyzed and he couldn't talk anymore. He could only move his eyes. They made this cheap device which you can buy with cheap glasses and this free software and PlayStation camera. You can make it yourself at home, and you can start making drawings with your eyes. So I love the idea, and they made it not as a kind of startup, they made it open source. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna donate whatever. If I get the prize, I will donate it to these guys. If it's 100,000, I give it to them. And I told this to the jury, and then they didn't give me the 100,000. They gave me the special prize, which was 8,000. So they didn't want to let me do what I want to do. And at the end, I still went to LA, met the guys, I got their bank account and gave them this money to develop. So they gave me one prototype with one of the first. I have it. They used, and so I went to the hospital, visit them, and so on. Anyway, this was like a little bit internal kind of issue, that how I could deal with such a format. You know, first I left myself outside, and then later I tried to enter as far as I can go and repurpose the grounds, right? This is an animation I did in Gwangju, in Korea. Again, I was invited to a very different context that I don't really know. I was maybe once there before, so I didn't know the context in Gwangju, but they had a lot of uprisings. And it was also 2016, not much after Gezi uprising. When I was invited, it was 2015. and it was the time of a campaign when Turkey was buying millions of tear gas canisters from Korea. So they had their always good relationship, but that the newest deal was to buy all the gas canisters from Korea and to use it against the protesters in Turkey. And then suddenly I found myself in Korea. I thought, okay, did they have a similar story? And they actually had a similar story. So this guy, Lee Han-yul, was shot. He was a university student during the uprising, and his funeral became the key moment of the uprising of today's South Korea. So he was accidentally shot by tear gas canister and lost his life. And this was 1987. So they had exact same stories that I know in Turkey. So I just took one of the anonymous story, not the famous one, but anonymous story in my hometown. 8-year-old kid was shot with the tear gas canister, and it was also approved by the court. And the two police who did it was punished from the act of killing this little kid. So I made animation, 2 versions. The Kurdish kid was in Gwangju in a public screen, and the Korean guy was gonna be in Istanbul in a public screen, but then they shut down the public screen for some other reason, so I could only put it in an exhibition space, but was supposed to go to a public screen. Same time, same story, just switch the countries. And the 2 kids, they are in a good mood, actually giving people tips about how they can protect themselves in a moment of tear gas attacks. Because after the protest, there was a lot of internet forums where everybody became like chemistry experts how to deal with this attack, so with all the details and everything. So this was like kind of, you know, in the planes you have these introduction videos. It was a video for how to protect yourself, introduced by these 2 important characters. Okay, this is too long story. I'm gonna skip it, and maybe we can move to the questions very soon. I will show this as well. We had a moment in Turkey, you know, contemporary art was happening the last 20 years, but there was a moment many spaces closed down, and now new ones opening. But it was not so best moment. This I did in 2016. And a lot of institutions, we had emotional connection. No matter if they are private gallery or a big museum or a non-profit place or a residency place, everyone through the years had a connection with those institutions. So I asked if they still have their original signs, you know, after they closed down. So half, we were able to get the original signs, and we made this crying wall of closed institutions. And no matter how big scale or small scale institutions they are, and some of them we reproduced. And at the opening, it was just 2 days before the military coup. Everybody came, and it was one of the best moments. I think there was like few hundred people, and they all either worked, interned, or exhibited, or directed these institutions. And somehow there was this amazing moment of everybody coming together because this work was there and they just wanted to come and see it. So it was not just a passive work, you know, thinking about the past, how great it was and so on. Everybody was there and everybody still, they were active, you know. So the institutions are kind of come and go, but the people remains. So, and they change positions, and from very low position to very high position. And they have the different kind of solidarity, sometimes through those institutions, sometimes without the institutions. Okay, this was an intern VIP launch in Dubai. I was asked to do a project at the art fair again, and I didn't like the idea again. So I thought I'd do a VIP launch for the interns. They never had a space. So they never had a space for meeting, and there was around 60 interns in Dubai. And at the art fair there, they already had 3 VIP launches, so they already had hierarchies between VIP launches. So I made the 4th VIP launch in a very center area, and it was only accessed by the interns. So if you're an international collector or curator with a VIP card, they would think, ah, this is the VIP, and they would be kindly refused to enter. And then there was a huge rumor in the fair, there's this VIP lounge, nobody can enter. And intern had all kinds of facilities there. So I put, this is the other version, but here I put like table tennis, chocolate fountain, massage service, and all kinds of stuff, you know, that you don't find in the fancy VIP lounges. They only had champagne, nothing else. So, and then I invited, we did a program with well-known artists who happened to be in town, curators and so on. So they were the only ones they were allowed to enter. Later I did a version in Pompidou that was linked to the movement there that interns, there was like 10 years before this, there was a movement in France, there was no more free internship. So the government established a policy because of group of people, young people did this. Okay, so I think I'm just finishing here. This is a very funny work, I will tell you later. Yeah. Let me see if there is something. I think that's it. Yeah, I can finish it here. Thank you very much. And if you have questions, right, we have Q&A. Yeah. It's like
Hey, can we hear this? Can we hear this? No? No? No?
I didn't talk about the school. Just to add something, I didn't talk about the school, which is a very important part of my practice, but it's another lecture, so I'm not going to enter that zone. But we can talk about it in other contexts.
So because we're recording this and live streaming it, we're going to do questions from here, if that's possible. So if anybody has a question, please stand up. Anyone?
If any driver has a question.
You can also yell, but you know, you're not going to be recorded and sent online. Or a comment, or a thought, anything.
Did you hear me? Okay, that's good. Just that's important. Okay. Okay, we just turn on the music and drink.
Yeah, party. But the wine is not free. Hannah, please.
So if there's no comments, no questions, maybe just a little situation description. We wanted to do the lecture inside, but of course due to COVID it's somehow not possible, so we decided to do it outside. I hope you had the chance to hear and to see and enjoy as much as possible.
Maybe it's me.
So if there are no questions, at least no official loud ones for our streaming guests, all thousands of them following Ahmet online, then I think you can, of course, ask Ahmet or comment or whatever afterwards, or ask him on Thursday when he has a private seminar/workshop for our 12 Akademija students. Thank you so much. Hvala Dušan. Thank you Moderna Galerija. Thank you Zdenka for supporting us through the screen and projector and everything. Hvala Lena. Hvala ULAY Foundation. Hvala Fotopub. Hvala, ker ste z nami. Lep večer.
Hvala. Music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Music, yeah. Dobar dan.
Ne, to je moj prijatelj. Si dobar?